The Silverbell Mines bunkhouse still had electricity, which was the only reason I picked it. Well, that and the fact nobody'd been looking for me this far into the Nevada nothing. 3 weeks I'd been squatting here, living off canned beans from the company store and trying not to think about the money I owed Danny Ortega back in Reno, or the restraining order, or the truck I ditched near Fallon with the plates stripped off. My name's Ray Dunbar, and I fix slot machines for a living. Fixed, past tense. Turns out casinos don't appreciate it when you fix them too well, if you know what I mean. The Eldorado caught me with my hand in the EPROM chips, literally reprogramming their nickel slots to pay out more than they took in. Not by much, just enough that my buddy Trevor and I could make a steady $500 a week without raising flags. Except we got greedy, started hitting the quarter machines, then the dollar progressives. Anyway, Silverbell was one of those ghost towns that never quite committed to being abandoned. The mine shut down in '92, something about silver prices and EPA violations, but the company kept the lights on, probably for insurance reasons or tax write-offs. The bunkhouse had running water, a microwave that worked half the time, and nobody around to ask why the power bill kept getting paid. I was sitting on the porch that morning, 4th or 5th cup of instant coffee burning my tongue, when I heard the first helicopter. Military from the sound of it. Black Hawk, maybe. My Uncle Vernon flew Hueys in Vietnam and used to bore me with the differences, so I can tell a Chinook from a civilian newsbird even when I'm half asleep. This one passed low over the ridge, heading south toward Highway 95. Then another. Then 3 more in formation. "Ha!" I said to nobody. The desert does that to you. Makes you talk to yourself. I'd been having whole conversations with the jackrabbit that lived under the generator shed, usually about whether I should risk driving into Tonopah for real food or keep eating 1994 vintage pork and beans. The jackrabbit wasn't there that morning, which should have told me something. I went inside to check my phone. No signal as usual. Silverbell sits in a dead zone between cell towers, another reason I picked it. Can't get arrested if nobody can find you, right? Can't get served with papers. Can't have Danny's cousin Hector tracking your GPS to collect the 18 grand you borrowed for a sure thing at the sports book. Except now I wanted signal. Needed it. The bunkhouse had a radio, one of those old CB setups truckers used to use. I gotten it working last week, mostly out of boredom. Spent 2 days on the roof with a coat hanger and electrical tape, rigging up an antenna from scrap wire I found in the mine office. The thing could pick up trucker chatter from I-80, usually guys complaining about the way station near Lovelock or arguing about the best lot lizards in Elko. I flipped it on. Static. Adjusted the squelch. More static. Then, Highway 95 is closed from Tonopah to Hawthorne. Repeat. Highway 95 is not safe for. The signal died. I spun the dial, caught fragments. Not stopping at checkpoints. Military says shoot on sight if they. My wife is in Fallon. I need to know if. Saw them tearing into someone at the rest stop. Just tearing into. My coffee cup hit the floor. Didn't even notice until the ceramic exploded on the linoleum. I'd been following the news before I went off-grid. There'd been something in Portland, riots, they said, though the videos looked wrong. People moving in ways people don't move, all jerky and wrong-jointed like broken puppets. The governor called in the National Guard. Then Seattle started reporting the same thing. Sacramento, Reno. That was 3 weeks ago, right before I ran. I told myself it was under control. The feds always got shit under control eventually. Quarantines, vaccines, whatever. I had bigger problems like Danny Ortega's collection methods, which involved a tire iron and your kneecaps. Guess I should have kept watching the news. I spent the next hour glued to that CB, catching fragments. The government wasn't calling them infected. The official term was compromised individuals exhibiting aggressive behavioral symptoms. But the truckers had simpler words. Biters, runners, Deadheads, though that last one seemed wrong, the videos showed them moving plenty. From what I could piece together, the highways were clogged with evacuation traffic. People fleeing Vegas, Reno, Sacramento, heading east mostly toward Utah, Arizona. Except the infection spread faster than anyone predicted. Rest stops became death traps. Small towns got overrun in hours. And now they were in the desert. I went outside again. The helicopters had stopped, but I could see dust plumes on the horizon, maybe 10 miles off. Too much dust for wind. That was vehicles. Lots of them. The mine had tools. That's what I kept thinking about. Silverbell Silver Company might have been shut down for 30 years, but they'd left behind a whole supply shed full of equipment. Pickaxes, pry bars, sledgehammers. The kind of stuff that could crack open a rock face or a skull if it came to that. Not that I planned on it coming to that. I grabbed my truck keys, then remembered I didn't have a truck anymore. The F-150 I ditched near Fallon was either impounded or stripped for parts by now. I'd hiked the last 15 miles to Silverbell, carrying everything I owned in a duffel bag that mostly contained stolen slot machine components and a change of underwear. Shit, I said. Shit. The mine had a vehicle, actually. Some kind of utility cart, electric, the kind they used underground. Battery was dead, but I'd been tinkle charging it off the bunkhouse outlet, figuring I might need it eventually to haul water from the pump house. Top speed maybe 15 miles per hour. Range probably 5 miles if I was lucky. Versus walking in the desert with biters somewhere out there. I looked at the dust plumes again. Closer now, maybe 8 miles. The CB crackled. Anyone near Silverbell, do not approach Highway 95. Infected crossing the roadway in groups of. I shut it off. Here's what I'm good at. Finding angles, spotting patterns, making bad situations work in my favor at least temporarily. That's how I lasted 5 years in the casino business before getting caught. How I survived 2 years in county without getting shanked. How I managed to owe money to only one major criminal instead of 3 or 4. I'm also good at running away. The bunkhouse had supplies for maybe another week if I stretched it. Water from the well, canned goods, a camp stove with propane. The mine itself had dozens of places to hide. Shafts, equipment rooms, even an old powder magazine that was probably still structurally sound. Or I could load up the utility cart and make a run for. Where? Tonopah was 40 miles north. Hawthorne 30 miles south. Both on Highway 95, which was apparently a death sentence now. East was nothing but desert until you hit some ranch roads that might lead to Route 6, assuming I didn't die of dehydration first. West was more desert, plus the mountains, plus the California border where things were supposedly worse. Hell of a choice, Ray, I muttered. The dust plumes were 6 miles out now. I could hear engines, lots of them, not moving in convoy formation, more like scattered, panicked, some fast, some slow, some that sounded like they were grinding gears or missing mufflers. I made my decision. The supply shed smelled like rust and pack-rat shit, but it was organized. Somebody from the mining company had real OCD, everything labeled, sorted, racked. I grabbed a pickaxe first, the kind with a 30-inch handle and a head that had to weigh 5 pounds. Swung it once. Heavy but balanced. Could definitely cave in a skull. Jesus, I was thinking about caving in skulls. I added a pry bar, a ball-peen hammer, and a box of blasting caps that were probably expired but might work as improvised noisemakers. Some rope, a headlamp with dead batteries that I swapped for fresh ones from the bunkhouse. Work gloves, a dust mask, thinking about all that desert sand. Then I went to the powder magazine. It was locked, but the lock was so old I popped it with the pry bar in 30 seconds. Inside, shelves of deteriorating dynamite that I wasn't touching with a 10-foot pole, some blasting cord, detonators, and jackpot 3 road flares. I took the flares and got out before something exploded. Back at the bunkhouse, I loaded the utility cart. Tools, water jugs, canned food. The CB radio yanked free from its mount. My duffel bag with my absolutely useless stolen Eprom chips. I thought about taking the microwave but couldn't figure out where I'd plug it in underground. The engines were louder now. 3 miles, maybe. I could see individual vehicles, cars, trucks, a few RVs. Some driving normal, some weaving like drunks. Some stopped dead in the middle of the desert with doors hanging open. Then I saw why. A figure ran across the hardpan, moving wrong. Too fast, too fluid, like a sprinter, except sprinters don't run with their arms dangling and their heads cocked at angles that should snap necks. It headed straight for a pickup truck that had stopped maybe 2 miles out. The truck's door opened. Someone got out. I couldn't tell if it was a man or woman from this distance. They took maybe 3 steps before the running figure hit them. Even across 2 miles of desert, I heard the screaming. I shoved the last water jug into the cart and drove it toward the mine entrance. The utility cart's electric motor whined like a dying mosquito, top speed maybe 12 miles per hour. I'd never make it anywhere in this thing, but I could make it into the mine. The main shaft entrance was reinforced with steel I-beams and concrete, built to last centuries. The tunnel sloped down at a gentle grade, wide enough for 2 carts to pass. The company had installed lights every 50 feet, and most of them still worked. I drove in 100 yards, then stopped and listened. Outside, more engines, more screaming, the flat crack of gunfire, distant. Inside, water dripping somewhere deep, the hum of my cart's motor, my own breathing too fast. I should have kept going deeper, should have found some dead-end chamber and barricaded myself in. Instead, I turned the cart around, positioned it facing the entrance, and shut off the motor. Grabbed the pickaxe, walked back to the entrance and stood there like an idiot, watching the desert turn into hell. The infected reached Highway 95 around noon, and that's when the evacuation traffic stopped being traffic and started being a massacre. I watched it from the mine entrance, pickaxe in hand, trying to convince myself I was safe. The mine sat maybe a quarter mile from the highway, up a dirt access road that was barely visible unless you knew it was there. Most people fleeing south wouldn't even notice it. Most people. The first one that found me was driving a Honda Accord with California plates, weaving up the access road like she was drunk. Except I could tell she wasn't drunk. She was looking over her shoulder every 2 seconds, and when she finally stopped in a spray of gravel, her eyes went straight to the mine entrance. Then to me, standing there with a pickaxe like some horror movie prospector. "Is it safe in there?" she yelled before she even got out. Mid-30s, maybe, wearing business casual that was torn and bloodstained. "Can we hide in there?" "We," I said. The back door opened and 2 kids spilled out. Probably 8 and 10, boy and girl. The girl was crying. The boy just looked stunned. "Please," the woman said. "They're right behind me." I looked past her down the access road. Nothing yet. "How far?" "I don't know. A mile? Less." She grabbed both kids, pulling them close. "I'm not asking for supplies or anything. Just somewhere safe until this is over." "Lady," I said, "I don't think this is going to be over." She stared at me. "What?" "Get in the mine. All of you. Fast." I didn't wait to see if she listened. Went back to my utility cart, grabbed 2 water jugs and a can of beans. Came back. The woman had both kids inside the entrance, pressed against the rock wall like she thought the ceiling might collapse. "Name's Ray," I said. "Don't touch anything that looks explosive." "Meredith," she said. "Meredith Huang. This is Owen and Claire. They're my sister's kids. I was driving them to Reno when," her voice cracked, "when this started happening." "Your sister?" "Dead," Owen said flatly. Kid's face was blank. Shock, probably. I'd seen that look before in county. New inmates who couldn't process what was happening to them. Right, I said. Okay, there's bunks about 50 yards down. Might have rats, but better than out here. What about you? Meredith asked. I'm staying here. Someone needs to watch the entrance. That was partly true. Mostly I just couldn't stand being underground yet. The mine made me feel trapped, even though logically I knew it was safer than the surface. Something about the walls pressing in, the weight of rock overhead. County lockup had been bad enough. I set up watch with my CB radio, scanning channels while the Huang family disappeared into the tunnel. Occasionally I'd catch a broadcast. Checkpoint at Hawthorne is overrun. Repeat, do not. Anybody know if Tonopah is still clear? My daughter. Fuck your daughter. I need to know about Highway 6. Then, this is Colonel Reeves with the Nevada National Guard. All remaining civilians should shelter in place. Do not attempt highway evacuation. Repeat, do not. Static. I should have felt relieved that I'd stayed at Silverbell instead of trying to run. Instead, I just felt trapped. 3 weeks hiding from Danny Ortega, and now I was hiding from something worse. Way worse. Around 3 p.m., the first infected found the access road. I saw him from 100 yards out. Male, probably, though it was hard to tell under all the blood. Moving in that wrong-jointed way, head tilted, arms swinging loose. He wasn't running yet, just loping along the dirt road like he had all day. Until he saw me. Then he ran. Jesus, he was fast. I'd seen the videos online back before I went dark, but seeing it in person was different. His legs pumped like pistons, feet barely touching ground, and the sound he made. Not a roar, not a scream, more like a high-pitched keening that set my teeth on edge. I raised the pickaxe. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. 50 yards, 40, 30. I'm not a fighter, never have been. In county, I survived by keeping my head down, paying protection money to the Aryan Brotherhood with cigarettes and phone time. The one time I got into it, some skinhead wanted my bunk. I got my ass kicked so thoroughly they put me in medical for 3 days. 20 yards. Come on, you fucker, I heard myself say. Not brave, just terrified. 10 yards and I could see his eyes. Bloodshot, wild, pupils blown so wide they looked black. Veins standing out on his neck like cables. Mouth open and drooling. Lips pulled back from teeth that were cracked and bloody. 5 yards and I swung. The pickaxe head caught him in the shoulder instead of the skull. I aimed high, missed, and the impact nearly tore the handle from my hands. He went down sideways, the pick still buried in his collarbone, and started thrashing. The keening sound got louder, turned into something between a shriek and a gurgle. I yanked the pickaxe free, raised it again. This time I aimed for his head and didn't miss. The keening stopped. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, just breathing. The body leaked into the dust. I'd killed someone, something, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Mr. Ray. I spun around. Claire, the little girl, standing at the mine entrance, staring at the body. Get inside, I said, too harsh. I tried again. Please, go back inside with your aunt. Is he dead? Yeah. Are there more? I looked down the access road. More dust plumes on Highway 95. More vehicles stopped or crashed. More figures moving between them. Yeah, I said, there's more. By sunset, I'd killed 3 more. The second one came around 4 p.m., another runner. I got him from a better angle this time. Caught him in the throat with the pick point, which dropped him faster. Still thrashed for a while, though. Still made those sounds. The third and fourth came together around 6, which was worse. One of them was a woman wearing the remains of a waitress uniform, IHOP logo still visible under the blood. The other was someone's grandfather, old enough that he should have been in a nursing home, not sprinting across the Nevada desert trying to kill me. I got the grandfather first. He was slower, then the waitress. She got close enough to grab at me, fingers hooking into my shirt before I brought the pick down on her skull. Meredith came out after that one. "You need help," she said. "I need you to stay inside with the kids. Owen's asleep. Claire's watching him." She picked up the pry bar I'd left near the entrance. I used to do Krav Maga before my sister got sick and I had to move in to help with the kids. Not saying I'm an expert, but lady, these things don't stop unless you kill them. And I mean really kill them. Headshots, spinal cords. You ready for that? She looked at the bodies. The grandfather's skull was caved in like a rotten melon. The waitress was missing half her face. "No," Meredith said quietly, "but I don't think ready matters anymore." We dragged the bodies away from the entrance, piled them in a wash about 30 yards off. I didn't want them visible from the road. Might attract more, or it might not. Hell if I knew how these things worked. The CB was still crackling with transmissions, though fewer now. Most of what I caught was automated emergency alerts. Emergency alert. Nevada highways unsafe. Infected migration confirmed. Emergency alert. Desert region not viable for evacuation. Real helpful, that last one. Where were we supposed to go? Kansas? Around 8 p.m., the highway went quiet. No more engines. No more gunfire. Just wind and the distant sound of something that might have been screaming or might have been coyotes. Meredith stood next to me at the entrance, both of us holding tools like weapons. The sun was setting over the mountains, painting everything orange and red. Beautiful if you ignored the bodies and the blood and the end of the world. "How long can we stay here?" she asked. I've been doing math in my head. Food and water? Maybe 10 days if we're careful. Power? However long the mine's solar panels keep working. Indefinitely, probably. And after that? After that, we hope the government gets this under control. She laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. "You really think that's going to happen?" I didn't answer. Day 3 in the mine was when I realized we weren't hiding, we were trapped. Owen started it. Kid barely spoke, mostly just stared at the tunnel walls. But on the 3rd day, he finally asked, "Why don't we just drive to Utah?" We were in the bunkhouse area, eating canned peaches and stale crackers. I'd moved the utility cart down here permanently, using it to haul supplies from the upper storage rooms. Meredith had found blankets and made up 3 bunks that didn't smell too much like rat piss. "Because the highways are fucked," I said, then caught Meredith's look. "Messed up. The highways are messed up." "But we have a car," Owen said. "Aunt Meredith's car." "Your aunt's car is out of gas, kid." This was a lie. Meredith's Accord still had a quarter tank when she'd pulled up. But I'd siphoned it 3 days ago, stored it in a jerry can in the supply shed. We needed that gas for the generator if the solar panels quit. Or for the utility cart if we had to make a run for it. Or for burning infected bodies, though I hadn't mentioned that option to Meredith yet. "So we get more gas," Owen said. "From where?" He didn't have an answer for that. The truth was more complicated. Yeah, the highways were death traps. But Silverbell wasn't a long-term solution either. We had maybe a week left of decent food. The canned stuff would last longer, but not much. Water wasn't a problem yet, but the well pump ran on electricity, and if the solar panels died. Plus, there was the obvious. We were 5 people in a dead-end mine with exactly one way out. If infected found us in serious numbers, we were screwed. I'd been thinking about this for 3 days and kept coming back to the same conclusion. We needed to get out. Not immediately, the desert was still crawling with infected, but soon. Before the food ran out. Before something broke that I couldn't fix. Problem was, where the hell would we go? There's a ranch, Meredith said suddenly. East of here. My sister used to know the family. The Becketts, I think. They had a place near some hot springs, 20 or 30 miles out. And you think they're still alive? I think it's worth checking. I thought about the utility cart. Top speed 12 miles per hour, range maybe 10 miles with a full charge. 20 or 30 miles was impossible. Unless. The mine has trucks, I said slowly. Service vehicles. Saw them in one of the garages near the crusher building. Do they work? Hell if I know. Haven't checked. We went to look that afternoon, leaving the kids in the bunkhouse with strict instructions to stay put. The crusher building was on the surface, 100 yards from the mine entrance. Far enough that we had to make a run for it, scanning the desert for infected before we moved. The building was unlocked, roof half collapsed, but inside were 3 vehicles. 2 pickup trucks with flat tires and no batteries, and 1 ancient Ford Bronco that looked like it had been parked in 1992 and forgotten. Please tell me you're a mechanic, Meredith said. I fix slot machines. Same difference, right? Not even close. But I'd grown up poor in Elko, which meant I'd learned to keep shitty cars running with duct tape and prayers. The Bronco had compression in the cylinders. I checked by pulling the spark plugs, and the engine wasn't seized. Someone had drained the fluids before storing it, which was good. The battery was dead, but I could replace that with the one from Meredith's Accord. Tires were the problem. All 4 were flat, dry-rotted to hell. I found spares in the garage, but they were just as bad. So we're stuck, Meredith said. Not stuck, just delayed. What's the difference? I looked out the garage door across the desert. Highway 95 was visible from here and the vehicles on it. Most had stopped moving days ago. Some had bodies in them, visible even from a distance as dark shapes in the driver's seats. Difference is, stuck means we die here. Delayed means we figure out how to leave. That night, the CB picked up something new. Anyone receiving, this is Safe Haven Station broadcasting from Mount Charleston. We have food, water, medical supplies, protected perimeter, solar power. If you can make it to the mountain, we have space. Then static. I tried to respond but got nothing. Tried to triangulate the signal but couldn't. Mount Charleston was, what, 150 miles southwest? Near Vegas? Might as well have been on the moon. Still, the fact that someone was broadcasting meant survivors. Organized survivors with resources. We should try for it, Meredith said. She'd been listening over my shoulder. In what? The Bronco needs tires, and even if we get it running, 150 miles through infected territory. Better than sitting here waiting to die. She was right, which pissed me off. Here's what you need to understand about me. I'm not a hero. Never claimed to be. I'm the guy who steals from casinos and runs from debt collectors. The guy who ditched his truck and hiked into the desert to hide from problems. I survived by being small, invisible, not making waves. But sitting in that mine with Meredith and her dead sister's kids, listening to the world end on a CB radio, that was making me feel something I hadn't felt in years. Responsible. Day 5, I found the mining truck. Not in the crusher building, this was deeper in the lower garage where they'd kept the underground equipment. Big, 6-wheeled beast with balloon tires meant for hauling or diesel engine, which meant it might still run if I could find fuel. The tank was empty, but the generator, I said out loud. Meredith looked at me. What? The backup generator for the mine. It's diesel. Must have a tank somewhere. We found it behind the maintenance shed. A 1,000-gallon tank, rusty but intact. The manual pump still worked. It took us 2 hours to fill the mining truck, hand-cranking diesel a gallon at a time while Claire kept watch at the surface. The truck's battery was dead, but I jump-started it from the Bronco's half-charged one. The engine turned over on the third try, coughing blue smoke, then caught with a roar that echoed through the garage. "Jesus," Meredith said over the noise. "That'll bring every infected in 20 miles. Good thing we're leaving." Except we weren't. Not yet. Because that night, the infected found us in force. I was on watch at the mine entrance, sitting on a crate with the pickaxe across my knees, when I heard the engines. Multiple vehicles moving fast up the access road. Not infected. Infected didn't drive. For trucks pulled up in a spray of gravel and dust. The first one had a machine gun mounted in the bed, a real M249 saw, the kind I'd only seen in movies. The other three were pickup trucks full of men with rifles. The lead truck's door opened and out stepped a guy in National Guard fatigues. Except they were wrong. The patches had been torn off, replaced with something hand-stitched that looked like a rattlesnake coiled around a gear. "This mine occupied?" he called out. I stood up, pickaxe still in hand. "Yeah." "How many?" "Just me." He looked at me, then at the mine entrance, then back at me. "You're a shit liar." "Fine. 4 of us. 2 kids. What do you want?" "Supplies. Food, water, ammunition if you've got it." "Don't have ammunition." "Then food and water." I could see the other men now climbing out of the trucks. A dozen of them, all armed. Some in guard uniforms, some in civilian clothes. All of them had that look, hollow-eyed, twitchy, the kind of guys who'd seen too much and stopped caring. "Can't help you," I said. The guard guy, or ex-guard, whatever he was, smiled. It wasn't friendly. Wasn't asking. Meredith appeared behind me. She had the pry bar, and from her stance, she was ready to use it. "We don't have supplies to spare," she said. "Lady, I don't give a shit what you have to spare." The ex-guard guy gestured to his men. "Search the mine. Everything useful gets loaded on the trucks." "Like hell," I said. He pulled a sidearm, a Beretta M9, standard military issue, and pointed it at my chest. "You want to die over a can of beans?" I looked at the gun, looked at his finger on the trigger, looked at the dozen other armed men who were watching this exchange with the bored expressions of people who'd done this before. "No," I said. "They looted us in 30 minutes. Took all the food except what they couldn't carry. Took the water jugs. Took the CB radio, the road flares, the work gloves. One of them found my duffel bag with the stolen slot machine chips and laughed, then tossed it in the dirt." "The fuck are these?" he said. "Nothing. Electronics." "You some kind of engineer?" "Something like that." The ex-guard guy came over, looked at the chips. "These worth anything?" "Not anymore." He studied me for a moment. "You were at Silverbell before this started." "Squatting?" "Yeah." "Hiding from something?" "Yeah." He nodded like that made sense. Lot of that going around. Everyone's hiding from something now. He dropped my duffel bag. "Keep your chips. We need food, not computer parts." They left 10 minutes later, trucks loaded with everything we'd stockpiled. As they drove off, one of the men in back gave us a mock salute. Meredith waited until they were gone, then turned to me. "What now?" "Now we leave. Tonight." "But they took everything." "Not everything." I headed for the supply shed. They didn't find the diesel, didn't check the lower garage, and they sure as hell didn't know about the mining truck. We loaded it by flashlight. The remaining canned goods I'd hidden in the powder magazine, water from the well in empty chemical drums, every tool that wasn't nailed down. The kids climbed into the cab, Claire looking terrified, Owen still blank-faced. The mining truck was slow, top speed maybe 30 miles per hour, but it was built to handle rough terrain. We could go cross-country if we had to, avoid the highways entirely. Where's the closest town? Meredith asked. I'd been looking at an old mine survey map I'd found in the office. There's a place called Belmont about 40 miles northeast. Probably abandoned, but it's on the way to Route 6. From there, I traced the road with my finger. Maybe we can make it to Ely, or north to Wells. And if those places are overrun, then we keep going until we find somewhere that isn't. We left Silverbell at midnight, headlights off, navigating by moonlight. The mining truck's diesel engine was loud enough to wake the dead, literally. And within 5 minutes I could see figures converging on the access road behind us. They're following, Claire whispered. Let them try. The truck's huge tires crushed sagebrush and creosote like they weren't there. We could go places infected on foot couldn't follow. At least that was the theory. We'd made it maybe 10 miles when the truck started overheating. I pulled over near a dry wash, popped the hood, and found the radiator leaking from a dozen cracks. Can you fix it? Meredith asked. Not without parts one don't have. Behind us, in the darkness, I could hear them, that high-pitched keening sound, getting closer. How many? Owen asked. First thing he'd said in hours. I grabbed the pickaxe from the truck bed. Too many. They came out of the darkness like a wave, dozens of them, maybe more, infected from Highway 95, from Tonopah, from wherever, all converging on the sound of our engine. We formed a circle around the truck. Me with the pickaxe, Meredith with the pry bar, the kids in the cab. The first infected hit us at a dead run, and I took his head off with a swing that jarred my shoulders. The second one grabbed Meredith's arm and she screamed, slamming the pry bar into its skull over and over until it stopped moving. The third, fourth, fifth, they just kept coming. I don't know how long we fought. Could have been 5 minutes, could have been an hour. My arms went numb. Blood soaked into the desert sand, turned it into mud. Some of it was theirs, some was mine. I'd gotten bitten on the shoulder, didn't even feel it until later. When it was over, we had maybe 30 bodies around the truck. Meredith was crying. Claire was screaming. Owen had crawled under the chassis and wouldn't come out. And the radiator was still broken. We have to go on foot, I said. My voice sounded wrong, distant. You're hurt, Meredith said. I looked at my shoulder. The bite was deep, bloody. I could see tooth marks. Yeah, I said. I noticed. We walked. That's what you do when the truck dies and you're 40 miles from nowhere with infected bodies piled around you like cordwood. You grab what you can carry, water, food, weapons, and you fucking walk. Meredith wanted to stay with the truck. We can defend it, she said. Wait for help. Help's not coming. I was wrapping my shoulder with strips torn from my shirt, trying to stop the bleeding. The bite throbbed with every heartbeat, hot and angry. Those guard guys aren't the rescue type, and everyone else is either dead or running. You don't know that. I know that. I cinched the bandage tight enough to make myself gasp. I've been listening to that CB for days. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. Owen crawled out from under the truck finally, dirt-streaked and silent. Claire grabbed him, held him close, both kids staring at me with eyes too old for their faces. The ranch, Meredith said quietly. The one I told you about. The Beckett's. 20 miles. I looked at my shoulder, at the blood seeping through the makeshift bandage. Maybe I make it. Maybe I don't. Don't talk like that. Lady, I'm not being dramatic. I got bit. We both saw what happens to people who get bit. She didn't answer. Didn't need to. We'd both seen it happen on Highway 95. The change took maybe 4 hours, sometimes less. First came fever, then the shaking, then you stopped being human and started being something else. I had maybe 3 hours if I was lucky. Leave me the pickaxe, I said. Take the kids and go east. There's a wash about 2 miles that way, runs northeast. Follow it and you'll hit the ranch road eventually. I'm not leaving you. Yeah, you are. I pushed the pickaxe into her hands. Because when I turn, someone needs to put me down, and I'm not letting those kids see that. Meredith looked at me for a long time. Then she nodded. They left me with a water jug and a can of peaches. I watched them disappear into the darkness. Meredith with the pickaxe, Claire holding Owen's hand, all 3 of them moving fast across the hardpan. I sat down against the mining truck's tire. The stars were bright, no light pollution this far from civilization. I could see the Milky Way, thick as paint across the sky. My Uncle Vernon used to say you could navigate by stars if you knew what you were doing. I never learned. The fever hit around hour 2. It started in my shoulder, radiating out like someone had injected fire into my veins. My hands started shaking. My teeth chattered even though the desert night wasn't that cold. I tried to drink water but couldn't keep it down. The bite wound looked wrong. Black around the edges, veins radiating from it like cracks in glass. I could feel something spreading through me, changing me. Not painful exactly. More like my body was becoming someone else's body, and I was just along for the ride. Hour 3, I started hearing things. Voices in the darkness. Uncle Vernon talking about helicopters. Danny Ortega asking where his money was. Trevor from the El Dorado laughing about the slot machine scam. My ex-wife Lisa. Jesus, I hadn't thought about Lisa in years. Telling me I'd never amount to anything. You're right, I told her ghost. You were always right. The shaking got worse. I found myself standing up without deciding to stand. Walking without deciding to walk. My legs moved on their own, carrying me away from the truck, out into the desert. That's when I understood. I wasn't turning violent. I was just leaving, like the part of me that was Ray Dunbar was checking out, and something else was moving into the vacancy. I tried to sit back down. Couldn't. My body kept walking. No, I said out loud. No, no, no. My voice didn't sound right. Too high-pitched. Too much like that keening sound the infected made. I was going to become one of them. Going to spend however long, hours, days, forever, running across the desert trying to tear apart anyone I found, including Meredith, including those kids. The pry bar was still in my belt. I pulled it out with hands that barely felt like mine anymore. Heavy. Could probably crush my own skull with it if I hit the right angle. Might take a few tries. Wouldn't be painless. But it beat the alternative. I raised the pry bar over my head, trying to figure out how to bring it down on my own skull hard enough to... Ray! The voice came from the darkness. I turned, saw a figure running toward me. Meredith. She had the pickaxe and was sprinting flat out across the hardpan. Get away from me! I tried to yell, but it came out as that keening sound. She didn't get away. She ran straight at me and I felt my body respond. Not Ray's body, the thing Ray's body was becoming. It wanted to attack her, tear into her, and I couldn't stop it. My arm swung the pry bar at her head. She ducked, came up inside my reach, and jammed something against my neck. I felt a sharp sting, then cold spreading through my veins. Different from the infection fire. This was ice numbing, spreading fast. I hit the ground. Above me, Meredith's face swam in and out of focus. The Becketts had horses, she was saying, and a vet kit, with sedatives. Ketamine, I think, for the horses. I'm sorry. I know this probably won't work, but I had to try. Everything went black. I woke up 3 days later in a bedroom I didn't recognize. The ceiling was wood planks. The walls were hung with photos of people I'd never met. Outside the window, I could see mountains and a corral with 2 horses. My shoulder hurt like hell, but it was a normal hurt, not infection fire, just the deep ache of a wound that was healing badly but healing. Meredith was sitting in a chair next to the bed, asleep. She looked like shit. Hollow-eyed, hair greasy, clothes stiff with dried blood and dirt. "Hey," I croaked. She jerked awake. "Ray, Jesus, you're you." "Think so." I tried to sit up, failed. "What happened?" "The ketamine knocked you out before the infection fully took hold. At least that's my theory. When we got here to the ranch, the Becketts helped me keep you sedated. 3 days. Fever broke yesterday." "The Becketts are alive?" "Yeah. They were already set up for quarantine, had a bunker, supplies, the whole prepper setup. When this started, they locked down. We got lucky." I looked at my shoulder. Someone had cleaned and bandaged it properly. "I should be dead." "Probably, but you're not." She leaned forward. "The Becketts say they've heard about others who survived bites. Not many, but some. They think maybe if you can suppress the infection long enough, with sedatives, hypothermia, whatever, your immune system has a chance to fight it off." "That's not how infections work." "Yeah, well, none of this is how anything works." She rubbed her eyes. "Look, I'm not a doctor. Neither are the Becketts. All I know is you were dying and now you're not." I thought about that, about the fire spreading through my veins, my body walking without permission, the sound I'd made that wasn't human. "How close was I?" I asked. "Close enough that I gave you enough ketamine to kill a horse. Literally." She laughed, but it was shaky. "Claire's been asking about you. Owen too, though he won't admit it." "They okay?" "As okay as anyone is right now." We sat in silence for a while. Outside, I could hear the horses moving in the corral. Normal sounds, almost peaceful if you ignored everything else. "The CB's still working," Meredith said eventually. "The Becketts have a whole ham radio setup, better than what we had. They've been monitoring the emergency bands. And Nevada's mostly gone. Vegas, Reno, all the cities. Military's pulled back to Colorado and Utah, trying to establish a containment line. Some safe zones in California, but they're not accepting refugees anymore." "What about Mount Charleston? That broadcast we heard?" "Nothing. They went dark 2 days ago." I closed my eyes. "So we're fucked." "Maybe. Or maybe we just stay here. The Becketts have enough supplies for 5 people for about a year, if we're careful. After that," she shrugged. "After that, who knows? Maybe things get better. Maybe we learn to survive in whatever this is now." "That's not much of a plan." "It's not, but it's what we've got." She stood up, stretched. "There's soup. You should eat." She left me alone with my thoughts and my aching shoulder and the photos of strangers on the walls. 3 weeks later, I was up and moving. Not well, the shoulder would never be right, left me with a hitch in my reach and constant low-grade pain, but functional. The Becketts turned out to be in their 60s, Walt and Doreen, ex-military both. They'd been preparing for the end of the world since Y2K and were almost smug about being right. Their ranch sat in a valley with only one access road, defendable, with a well and solar panels and enough freeze-dried food to outlast the apocalypse. Or at least outlast us. We settled into a routine. Walt taught me how to shoot. Turned out I wasn't terrible with a rifle, though my shoulder made it hard to hold steady. Doreen showed Meredith how to can vegetables from their greenhouse. The kids helped with the horses, which seemed to be good for them. Owen started talking again. Claire stopped having nightmares every night. The infected were still out there. We'd see them sometimes, distant figures wandering the desert. But they didn't come close. Maybe the isolation protected us. Maybe we just got lucky. The CB ham radio, whatever, kept broadcasting. Mostly automated emergency alerts that nobody was listening to anymore. Emergency alert. Nevada highways unsafe. Infected migration confirmed. Emergency alert. Desert region not viable for evacuation. Sometimes we'd catch other survivors. Usually they were gone by the next day, their broadcasts ending mid-sentence or just never coming back. Once we heard a group claiming they were heading for Alaska. Once we heard someone in Elko saying they'd fortified a grocery store and had room for 10 more people. We never tried to respond. Walt said broadcasting was asking for trouble. Either infected would hear and converge, or other survivors would come looking for supplies. Better to stay quiet, stay hidden, stay alive. I thought about Danny Ortega sometimes, about the money I owed him, the restraining order, the truck I ditched. None of it mattered anymore. Danny was probably dead. Everyone I'd known in Reno was probably dead. The casinos were empty. The slot machines I'd spent 5 years learning to manipulate were gathering dust in buildings nobody would ever visit again. The world I'd been hiding from was gone, replaced by something worse. And somehow I was still here. "You think about leaving?" Meredith asked one night. We were on watch together, sitting on the ranch house porch with rifles across our knees. The stars were bright enough to read by. "Where would I go?" "I don't know. Somewhere with more people. A real community. The Becketts are great, but 5 people isn't enough to rebuild civilization." "You want to rebuild civilization?" She was quiet for a long time. "I want my sister's kids to have a future. Something better than just surviving." I thought about Claire and Owen, about how they'd adapted, learned to live in this new reality, about how resilient kids were when they had to be. "Maybe," I said, "or maybe surviving is enough for now." Another silence. Then, "You still think about before?" Before this. Your old life." I considered lying but couldn't see the point. "Yeah, sometimes. Mostly I think about how stupid my problems were. Owing money, dodging cops, fixing slot machines. All that seems pretty fucking trivial now." "Not trivial. It was your life." "Yeah, well, now I've got a different life." She nodded. We sat there for a while longer, watching the desert and the stars and the empty highway in the distance where nothing moved anymore. Eventually she said, "Thank you for getting us out of Silverbell, for giving the kids a chance. Didn't really have a choice. You did. You could have left us at the mine entrance that first day. Plenty of people would have." I thought about that, about who I'd been 3 weeks ago. The guy running from debt collectors, hiding in a ghost town, willing to siphon gas from a woman's car without telling her. That guy probably would have left them. "Well," I said, "maybe I'm not that guy anymore." She smiled. "Maybe not." We kept watch until dawn, and when the sun came up over the mountains, it lit up a world that was broken and changed and probably doomed. But it was still there, still spinning, still full of people trying to survive one more day. And that had to count for something. The radio crackled to life around noon the next day. Walt was monitoring it. He always was, obsessively, like he thought he'd miss something important if he stepped away for 5 minutes. Establishing new quarantine zones in eastern Nevada. Military personnel and civilian volunteers needed for containment operations. If you're receiving this broadcast and are uninfected, proceed to coordinates. Walt grabbed a pencil, started scribbling. Grid reference November Echo 732. The signal died. We all looked at each other. Meredith, me, the Becketts, even the kids who'd been playing cards in the corner. "Volunteers," Walt said slowly. "They're asking for volunteers." "Which means they're desperate," Doreen added. "Or organized," Meredith countered. "Maybe things are stabilizing. Maybe they're actually fighting back now." I looked at my shoulder, at the scar tissue visible through my shirt, at the pickaxe hanging on the wall next to Walt's gun rack. I'd kept it, couldn't say why, some kind of reminder. "It's a choice," I said finally. We could stay here, be safe, wait it out. Or, Owen asked. Kid's voice was steady now, older somehow. Or we go help, maybe make a difference. Silence. Then Claire said, Mom would have helped. She was a nurse. She always helped people. Meredith's eyes went wet. Yeah, she would have. Walt stood up, looked at his wife. Some kind of wordless communication passed between them. Then he nodded. All right, he said. Let's go save the world. We left the ranch 3 days later, loaded into Walt's pickup with supplies and weapons and hope that might have been foolish but was all we had. The coordinates the radio had broadcast were 200 miles north. Near Wells, ironically, where I'd grown up fixing broken cars and dreaming of something bigger. Maybe I'd finally found it. The highway was still full of abandoned vehicles, still haunted by infected who moved wrong and keened in the darkness. But there were also other survivors now, convoys heading north, people we could wave to, share information with. The world wasn't saved, wasn't even close. But it wasn't ending quietly either. And that was something. I drove with one hand on the wheel and the other resting on my bad shoulder, feeling the ache that would never fully go away, feeling alive despite everything, feeling like maybe, just maybe, Ray Dunbar had finally found something worth more than 18 grand and a rigged slot machine. Worth surviving for. The desert stretched out ahead of us, red and gold and infinite. Somewhere in that infinity was a military checkpoint, a quarantine zone, a chance to fight back against the darkness. We drove toward it. Together.